Hello, SAT winners. In this quick presentation, I'm going to tell you about the science passage. Now, whenever you do SAT exam, you'll find that the third passage is the science passage here. So I'm showing you a few examples. This is from test 6, where they talk about why Texas gourd plants have limited aroma. This is about test 7, where they are talking about why birds fly in V formation. This is about test 8, where we are talking about some phenomenon showed by salt particles in the nano world and the macro world. So the topics might be from chemistry, from physics, from biology, but yeah, the third passage pretty much would be the science passage. So for questions 22 to 31 or questions 22 to 32 would always be from science passage. Now, as we discussed earlier, for each of the passages, you need to have one specific strategy. For science passages, I suggest you to follow the format. What is the format? Understand the structure of the passage. Whenever you find a science passage, which I told is from questions 22 to 31 or 32, you'll find that there is a general pattern. The first paragraph talks about the premise or the problem. So I'll start with the premise here actually. The first paragraph gives you the premise of the passage, or it can define the problem. The second paragraph would be further discussion about the problem itself. So premise, then there is a problem. Then there are certain assumptions and experimental setup. So in order to find out the right thing, the scientists would be doing some experiments, right? When they do the experiment, they get results. So next paragraph would be results, and the last paragraph would be actions. So to sum it up, the structure of a science passage is like this. It starts with the premise, then there is a problem, then there are assumptions, then there are results, and at the end there are actions. Let's have a quick look at this passage. So if you read the first paragraph here, you can pause and read it actually yourself. So you'll see that they talk about the premise, the background to the whole study, that there are Texas gourd plants and they have limited odor. And the reason that they have limited odor is that if the same odor actually attracts the bees, which are good, and the beetles, which are bad. So a flower not just attracts the good guys, which are bees, which help them for pollination, they also attract the bad guys, which are beetles. So the premise is given here. The next paragraph talks about the problem. So you can pause and read yourself, and you'll find that the next paragraph tells about the problem. So this gentleman from some certain universities took this as a challenge, or the topic or the subject of their study. Why do plants have limited odor? So they did some experiments to find out why do flowers have limited odor. Now all this from line 26 to all up to line 60, there are different experiments done by them up to line 57. They wanted to find out the effect of having more aroma. They also wanted to find out the effect of beetles. They wanted to find out the effect of hand pollination. So different agendas are introduced here, and the experiments are discussed. So let me just connect the dots once again. So we started with the premise, then there is a problem, then there are experiments. After the experiments from line 60, 56, 58 onwards, they talk about the results. So premise, problem, experiment, results. So they talk about different results here. And at the end, there are certain actions or conclusions. So what is the ultimate result of the whole study? Yeah. So this is how a science passage would always be structured. So when you start reading a science passage, you can tell yourself that, my dear, I'm just going to understand the premise. Then there would be a problem. So what is the problem would be told to you. Then there would be certain experiments. So, what kind of experiments are done. Based on the experiments, there would be results. Based on the results, there would be certain actions. One important point about science passage is that you can always start with the first paragraph and the last paragraph first. So you can read the first and the last paragraph to understand the gist of the whole discussion. It will save time, and then you can connect the dots. So like a Google map, if you know the beginning and the end, it is very easy to figure out what the whole passage is all about. So this is one suggestion. And yeah, you can try doing some passages on your own. Yeah, reading the science passage, you whenever you read the science passage, follow this template. Have this skeleton in your mind, that it will always start with the premise. They will define the problem. Then after that, there would be certain experiments. Then there would be certain results, and based on the result, there would be certain actions. And you can follow this particular structure while doing the science passages. Based on this information, you can do the science passages, which are pretty much question number 21 to 31 from all these tests, test 6, test 7, test 8. So you would have a thorough understanding of how science passages are structured, what kind of questions are there, and how good you are at answering science questions. So whenever you do science passages, you should follow the skeleton as I suggested. One more suggestion, a quick suggestion for you for doing the science passages would be to follow combing technique. Now, what is combing technique? Combing technique means read one paragraph at a time. So you can read up to line 16, understand what is said there, and answer questions based on this paragraph only. So combing means reading small sections of the paragraphs and doing questions with regard to that paragraph only. Once you are done with all the questions with regard to the given paragraph, you can move on to the next paragraph, the next paragraph. Like this, you can read the whole passage. So basically what you're doing is you are not reading the whole passage at once. You are reading the portions of the passage and doing questions with regard to that passage before you move on to the next paragraph. If you read the whole passage at once, you tend to forget a lot of details. And since there is so much of content in a science passage, imbibing the whole lot of details in one go is a little difficult. Now, there are people who come with excellent reading background. They have been into reading science fictions and they understand this kind of stuff. So if you are from that background where you have been into reading a great deal and reading science passage is not a big deal for you, retaining all that information is not a big deal for you, you can go with reading the whole passage before answering the questions. But most of us do not come with that kind of background into reading science fiction novels. So what you should do is read one paragraph at a time, answer questions with regard to that paragraph first, and then once you are done with the questions, you can move on to the next paragraph. One more important point which I want to discuss here is that the questions are in sequence, which means the first few questions would be from the first few paragraphs, the next questions would be from the next few paragraphs, and so on and so forth. So by reading each of the paragraphs, you can pretty much map the questions. If you read the first paragraph, obviously it would be related to first 2 3 questions, and like this you can go about doing the science passage. Now when you know the structure of the science passage, the template that you should follow, you do this exercise. Do test 6, test 7, and test 8, specifically the science passages. So yeah, you would be equipped with an experience. So you'll get an experience of doing these science passages. Once you are done with them, we can discuss them and we can figure out how you perform in science and what steps you need to take your game to the next level to improve your performance. All the best to you. Thank you so much.